Hello and welcome again. I am Anita Pebbles on a passion project, talking more with Emily Quandt, co-founder and facilitator of Free to Learn and Agile Community, Agile Learning Center, where the kids are 100% free to build and create their own education. What? No. So today we're going to get into an interesting question. But Emily, first, how are you today? Thank you for coming.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yay. Okay, we're here.
We have
about some levels stuff or whatever. I don't know. You mentioned something before. And here is our question for them. Are there certain levels of math that you try to achieve? And do you teach reading?
Okay, so this is similar to the question that we dealt with last week, except for it's like, what level do we want them to get to? And then we could stop worrying about them. So children are naturally curious and completely capable. If you fill their worlds with a rich and stimulating environment, we don't have to try to teach them anything. So they teach themselves, or they ask either of other students or facilitators to be taught. So when they need math to play a video game or track a sports statistic or bake muffins, budget for a trip, otherwise just navigate their world, then they will learn it. So when they need to read for writing stories or with their friends, managing their own blogs, using community tools like Kanbans independently, so they don't want to be, having someone else read things for them. If they want to find out what happens in the next Harry Potter book, if they, need to decipher notes from their friends, research dinosaurs, just otherwise navigate the world, then they learn it. So especially in an environment where facilitators are modeling around them passionate learning, things that they're personally interested in, and the community is supporting rather than shaming students who learn at different paces, kids stay curious and they're eager to keep learning. So we don't find that we have to push them into a level. We don't have to make sure that they're getting what they need to be getting. What we find is that eagerness to keep learning doesn't ever die. It just keeps going and going and going. So it's not something outside that I'm going to try to achieve. It's something that they naturally will pursue and continue on through their whole lives. It doesn't stop when they exit the school environment.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I could see how it would be something that would start and never stop, which is huge. So you said something that really stood out, like it kind of conged me a little bit. And it was about, instead of being somewhere where there's teachers trying to teach you this thing and all of these things are happening, and shaming comes up. So I guess what I would like to talk about is, aside from my personal opinion, this is kind of tricky to ask, but is that really what's happening in school systems? Do you think, well, let's just start there. Is that really something that's happening, whether or not it's intended?
I definitely feel like it's not intended. So I don't think any piece of, there's no teacher, I would say, who goes into teaching thinking I'm going to shame these children into doing what they're supposed to do. I think that they're there because they care about kids and they want to, they have their very, very best interest in mind, and they think that this is the best way that they can help them. So I definitely wouldn't think that it's intended. But what ends up happening anytime you are required to do something outside of yourself, right? from the teacher's perspective, for instance, like if I want you to do something that you're not interested in doing, there's only a few ways that I can really get you to do those things, right? Like, I could reward you. I could be like, hey, if you clean your room, I'll make you pancakes, right? Because you don't want to do that. And so I have to like trade off something in order to get your will engaged to do the task. So I can reward you. I could punish you. Like, if you don't do that, you're not going to get to go to your friend's house tonight. Or I could use like this subtle mix of the two where shame comes in, of like, I'm going to gently, like, it's not going to be a punishment, but I'm going to like compare you. Well, you know, every time you go over to your friend's house, their room is really, really clean. You don't want your room to be looking terrible, do you, when their room is clean? Like, maybe they'll come home with you tonight after you get done playing with them, and your room will look terrible, right? So you're like bringing in this manipulative, like, just think of how you're going to look compared to everyone else. Like, this isn't really, you know, and so it comes in there because you're trying not to, like, you don't want to make pancakes, so you don't have anything available to reward with in the immediate situation. And you're kind of an awesome person yourself, so you don't really want to punish them, right? So you kind of grasp into this ethereal area and like, what about if we just compare you to everyone else and say you're not meeting the standards? Like, well, you know, everyone else around you is better than you. Don't you want to be better? So not intentional, but I would say accidental shaming is happening because there's no intrinsic motivation for doing the activities that are being required of them.
Okay. Yeah, my daughter said yesterday with her meeting, after her meeting with her teacher, because he really works with, I mean, as far as this whole thing goes, the system they have is pretty great, but they still have to get work done, right?
Yeah.
But they do pretty well as they can to take care of the kids. But Christina she said she doesn't want to be left behind at the end of next month when everybody's presenting their ancient civilizations projects and their autobiographies. Like, she's in that community and she's self-directed in there. Okay, but that doesn't mean that she wants to jump into all these subjects. She just doesn't. And
Right.
so it's been a long road of navigating that. Like, she, in the end, you know, her bottom line was, I don't want to be left behind.
So it's so interesting to hear you say that, because it brings up for me that innate piece of us that really wants to like be a part of our community.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to watch it when you remove the compulsion and you allow freedom of choice in that element is really alive and on fire of like, oh, I don't want to be left behind. It's actually a really beautiful trait that's natural and normal and really, really wonderful and super motivating. But what it does is it ties into the relationship of what your friend is doing or what your adult, whether your friend or facilitator or wherever you're at, that I don't want to be left behind, instead of feeling that shame element, like, this isn't something I want to do, it's just, but I don't want to be left behind, right? So then you have that tension. Instead, what you get is like, oh my gosh, my friend's over there and this looks so interesting and so fun, and I'm going to run over there to meet them because I don't want to be left behind. So the words come out the same, but the expression on the face is completely different. The fire in your soul is completely different. And they go and pursue something very deeply that maybe they're not even super interested in, right? Which is exactly what she's having to do, is pursue something that she's not interested in. A lot of times we see kids who are doing things that they're totally like, what? You hate doing this. If I tried to make you do something like this, like I would get so much pushback. But we see them running to these projects because it is that little element of not wanting to be left behind. And so they want, hey, I was doing the thing that I was interested in. And then 4 of my friends got up and went and started this new project. And they just hop up, stop doing what they're doing and go into a new project that might not be a passion project for them right now, but they dive into it. They're all sitting around the table, they're laughing, they're playing, all the things that Christina also is experiencing at school, right? That's the piece that is good, is those relationships. So she's like, well, I'm here, we're all doing this project. I don't necessarily like it, but I'm with my friends. So they do end up doing very similar things, but when they're given the choice, like you can stay and do this project that you're already working on, or you can go join your friends doing this other project. When they have the freedom there, and it's not like, well, everybody's being made to move over here. It's just a whole different thing. So it's not a bad thing that we don't want to be left behind. Like so much learning happens because of that. But I'm a pretty big advocate of like, let the learning happen because it's their choice. Let those relationships bond together, not because you're trapped in the same thing, but because you care about those people, you love them, and you want to spend time with them. So it's really great to see that in action when they got to choose what the action is.
Yeah, that's a totally different experience for everybody involved. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's still the same, right? They still don't want to be left behind, but without the shame element of like,
can I imagine that?
Now you have freedom instead of that. Yeah, it's pretty great. I can't imagine it. It's really fun.
Wow. That's crazy. That would be so awesome. What a different growing up experience that would be. What a different kind of adult would that make?
I think it's so empowering to know that you can stay on your current project if you want, or you can invest in these relationships and move to a new project, right? You get where people are. You get like, oh no, I love and care about these people, so I'm shifting what I want to do. And then if it's too boring once I'm there, I'm just going to go back to what I was doing before, right? Like this morning, I've been working out with friends, and she's been doing these on Facebook. She's doing these Facebook Lives, and she's there. Like she's doing it on the East Coast, I'm doing it on the West Coast, and I can type a little chat in, and we can talk back and forth even during our workouts, right? So she's doing these really fun Tabata workouts, which are like only 20 seconds of working out, and then you get 10 seconds off. So it's perfect for my extremely short workout attention span. So it's really fun. Well, she got up this morning and I was there ready to roll, and she had her back this morning. So she's like, oh, we're just going to do yoga today. And I was like, yoga? That's the worst thing ever. I hate yoga. Hands down, hate yoga always. Never like yoga. Super boring, not going to do it. I would never, ever, ever go to a yoga class. But I woke up, I met my friend, and she was doing yoga today. So I was like, well, I hate yoga, but I guess I'm doing yoga. So I literally did yoga for 44 minutes this morning. She did it for almost 60, and I bounced out for the last few, right? But I was like in there with it because it was my friend. Like, okay, I'll do yoga because it's here. I wouldn't have gotten up, gotten dressed, and gone to a yoga class. But like, well, I was planning on doing something else. This worked out. So like it has broadened my experience. And now I know what a warrior 2 pose is, right? So I can like talk more effectively with yoga people. And you never know, like maybe one day I'll like it, and she'll probably throw it in here and there, and I'll get better at yoga, and it will benefit my life. But that's the only way I'm ever doing yoga. Just like, so there's a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily bad for you. If you compelled me to go to a yoga class, I would hate you. But I didn't have any problems with it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When I think about like what the kids are compelled to do all the time. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they manage their stress, honestly. Like, it's crazy. I mean, I grew up in school too, but you know, I was kind of checked out. So I just kind of like roboted through. I just followed, just kind of floated through. There's
I,
that.
I wonder if they don't store it in their bodies a little bit though. Like your body was responsive to the stress, even though you were kind of like just stuffing it down in your stomach.
That's true. Those who don't know, I've had stomach issues since I was young, and they're still here today. I'm still working it out. But
Yeah, I think we stuff it wherever we can, but you got to put it somewhere. It's a lot of stress for a little one, though. I mean, it's a lot of stress for anyone. That just shouldn't be.
it's crazy though, because it's the norm. It's the norm. I'm like, oh, okay.
It is the norm, and we go on to live lives where we expect that we would just feel bad. Like, why would we get to choose what we want to spend our days on? Like, why would that feel good? Why do we get to choose that? And you look at our entire culture, it's filled with people who go to work in places that they don't enjoy, with people that they're not in good relationships with, that they're not living lives of freedom. If you ask them, like, why do you go there every day? Just because I have to, or else I won't be able to pay my rent. And so we've like weeded out the idea that you have a choice in your life pretty effectively. But I mean, that's what the school system was implemented in order to accomplish. So you look at the first formalized school systems in Prussia, like the reason that they formalized school was to modify the culture. Like they had a very distinct agenda, that they wanted to make sure that all of the humans, like, start them when they're 5, so that you can make sure that they know that they don't have a choice, so that they'll follow what we want them to follow. So it's very, very specifically designed as a social, not even experiment, it's like a social endeavor to make free people into ones that just think that they have to follow orders.
Wow. Yeah, I've read about that, and it changed my whole outlook on everything. And it's really humbling to sit here and talk about that, considering, like, actually what's coming up is, how do we bridge, like, okay, school was created for a reason and it's still going on past its time. Like, how do we bridge that for there are people who are not interested. There are people who just will be like, no, the system works. Like, we render like educated people into Yale, like, no, this is what works. Like, it's, I want this, I want centers like yours to be the norm, but like, that's not gonna maybe not happen in this lifetime. So how do we bridge from like Prussia to free to learns, and I don't want to say open all of these minds, but it just doesn't, it's not for everyone. I get that. But there are people in my life who are like devoted to making sure that the kids do exactly what they're told and do all of their assignments, because they're afraid that their kids won't get the scholarship. And there's just no other option. Like, this is just what we do. And you can't say that it doesn't work, because in the end there are results. But I'm kind of getting off on a tangent now, but there are a variety of results that come from that as well. Yes, you can make it to Yale. Yes, you can, yes, you do know, you're not left behind. You do know what your friends know. I had a concern for my elementary school kids, that they don't know what their peers know, like, I had to work through that. So it's just a big thing. And, I'm wondering if there can be a bridge built. And maybe this is the bridge. Maybe this is part of one.
Yeah, I think so. With anything where you have basically the entire planet, like, this is the value right now, right? Like, this is how we do things. At one point in time, slavery was the value of the planet as well, right? Like, women didn't get to vote. You had all these things. So we've transitioned a bunch of things, like additions to freedom. And I would just say, like, we used to think that it was okay that you could enslave people based on the color of their skin. We used to think it was okay that you didn't get a choice, or let's say didn't get a choice, because that's basically what it is, right? So slaves obviously have no choice. Well, women also had no choice about like who their leaders were and all these things, right? Whether they get to own property or not, all of those. And I feel like children are like the last unfree people who don't get a choice. Like, sorry, you're the wrong size, you don't get a choice. Sorry, you're the wrong color, you don't get the choice. Sorry, you're the wrong gender, you don't get a choice. And now it's, sorry, you're the wrong age, you don't get a choice. So I'm hopeful in that now we recognize it doesn't matter what color you are, you get a choice. And we recognize it doesn't matter what gender you are, you get a choice. And so I'm anticipating eagerly that at one point in time in the future, we will also say, it doesn't matter what age you are, you get a choice. And this is just, you know, we're at the beginning stages of it. And it's kind of one of those things, you know, where you just have exposure to, here is a free Black family, and look, they are doing very well, right? They're just the same as anyone else. Look, here's a free woman, and she's doing just as well as everyone else. And now we're starting to build some great examples of, look, here's a free child, they're also doing well. So I think it's just, you know, a piece in our journey, and it just comes along, and we're kind of in the middle of it right at the beginning. There will be a tipping point at some point where finally there are like enough examples of, you can let a child be free and they're rad. Like, you can't say that this is going to be a failure, right? Like, it's just not.
Wow. I wonder how many years it will take, you know? How long did slavery last, for example? So schools lasted 150-ish.
Yeah, it hasn't been super long since schools were in. I think everything's, you know, it'll be interesting to see what this COVID virus does. And, you know, like, a lot of kids are free, and we'll see, you know, what happens. People's ideas might shift with this big, like, there's a ton of people who are schooling at home, but the kids are experiencing like that freedom of choice, and we'll see what happens when they're, you know, put back into their box. It'll be very interesting. You know, if you think like, if you would have let all the slaves free for, I don't know, 6 months, what kind of rampage would happen when you tried to rein them back in? Like, just, will it be, I don't know, we'll see what happens. So, but it's definitely something that's out of the ordinary and along the lines of freedom. And parents are like, I can't, this kid is gonna, like, they're not gonna do their thing. They're gonna take a picture of them listening and screenshot it on Zoom and put it up as their Zoom call with their teacher. And there's 20 other people in the call, and they're gonna be like, they're out playing with their dog, but they're attending class. They're attending because they have their paying attention Zoom picture on, you know? So.
Oh yeah, the things we figure out to get through. That's for sure. Yeah. So one thing that is coming up for me, and I'd love to ask you about, is like, you know, freeing the kids. They are awesome. They showed up here, awesome. They turn out awesome, right? This can happen. It is happening. It's underway. And what would you say to the one who is like, but their brains aren't developed yet, you know, like they can't, how much choice can you give somebody who's not completely developed in their brain, for example?
So I think as facilitators, we're not just putting them all in an empty room to be like, it's not like they're in a test tube, right? Like, we're not just putting them in the classroom and walking away. And now there's 22 kids in this classroom, and there's just, you know, mass mayhem of Lord of the Flies. what's happening is we recognize that they are developmentally where they are, right? So your 5-year-old is going to fall apart in a puddle when she realizes that she can't have the entire batch of Play-Doh. There's 3 other children who she has to split it with. That is going to happen. And that's developmentally appropriate, right? Like, she is made right now. Everything inside of her is made for feeling the feels and dripping into a puddle on the floor and wailing. So if that's where she is developmentally, then there's ways to support her, right? Like, here she is, we've made the Play-Doh together, everything was happy, happy, joy, joy, until she realized at the end of the project it wasn't all for her. And then now we have this huge problem that we have to deal with. And so we come alongside her developmentally, and we're like, hey, baby, like, how can I be with you in this? This is really sad. How are you feeling? Like, now we have to integrate. Now we're going to process all of the feels and try to think of something maybe at some point that might, feel a little bit better, whatever. So it's not necessarily like we're just giving them a choice, right? So then they can choose. She's not going to go in and just hoard all of the Play-Doh, which I think a lot of times you think like, well, if everyone is just given a choice, then she's going to be melting into a puddle. And so she just gets all the Play-Doh and everybody has to give her all the Play-Doh. So developmentally, she's got a lot of emotions and a lot of feels happening on, like, it was Christmas for her. She made this giant batch of Play-Doh and now you've just taken away her entire life. And so we're going to walk through with that in a developmentally appropriate way. So it's not, and we do that with a 5-year-old and the 6-year-old and the 7-year-old and the 8-year-old all the way along. And it's not just me walking through it with her. Now she's triggered the other 2 who wanted their Play-Doh and now they're mad, and right, there's this whole interplay going on. And then there's the one who's like, here, have my Play-Doh. I really care about you. I don't want you to feel sad. I'll give you my Play-Doh. So you have all these things at play with the Play-Doh. And the choice is in, like, she cares about the Play-Doh, so she's intrinsically motivated to work that shit out. Right? She's like, I want that Play-Doh. How do I get that Play-Doh? How do I make this work for me? So when you come alongside of her and you're looking for, like, maybe we could make an agreement on, like, how this could feel better for everybody. Maybe we could hear the friends and how they feel about it, because they're super interested in playing with Play-Doh too. She cares about the Play-Doh. So she rises to the occasion because she wants that Play-Doh. She's like, gotta have that Play-Doh. Mm-hmm. So what do I need to do to get that Play-Doh? And she cries it all out, and we nurture. Maybe she needs to take some time, but she comes back to the table because she cares about it. And so developmentally, we are able to manage things so much better because we have given them a choice. It's her choice to be at the Play-Doh table. And so now she's like, she's in it. She's going to come back. She's going to work with her friends. She's going to listen to them. Maybe she listens to them, gets frustrated again, goes away again. She's got to take some time. She puddles again, right? Okay. She comes back. Maybe it's the next day. Hey, do you want to talk about the Play-Doh today? We've got that great big thing of Play-Doh and we were talking about playing with it today. Maybe she comes back and today the friends have had it all day. Yesterday while she was melting into a puddle, and she gets the whole thing herself. And she realizes, like, stuff works out. It's okay. You can, you just work with where you are and there it is. And now she's playing in the Play-Doh all day long. Or maybe she's like, no, I never want to see Play-Doh again. I hate it. Because she was so disappointed yesterday, right? And that's okay too. Like, that's an emotion that you're going to experience all through your life. Like, you get to feel those emotions and work through them. So developmentally, her being able to come to the table brings her everything that she has. And then we're able to come alongside, meet that, and tag team with those developing moments and really support her and support the relationships and just be with her, whereas if she's not going to show up if she's melting into a puddle about something that you're forcing her to do, she's not going to want to be in relationship with me if the reason that she's in a puddle is because she's not doing the worksheet that I assigned her to do. So there's no togetherness. There's no, I can help you through this where you're at, right? It's just like, stop crying and do the sheet. Like, I just need you to do this. So it's really a much better way to help people, not to help people, but just to be there with them as they develop.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that was a nice chunk to think about, that's for sure. Yeah, because like my brain was asking as far as like curriculums and stuff, and like how they're just baked into the whole school experience, and you're talking about meeting people where they are type thing. Like what is allowed.
Yeah, which is
allowed, and from there anything can happen, including any math or reading.
Yeah, math or reading, right? Because math comes into play. What she thought was that 3 divided by 3 is 1.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, no, this is not getting cut up, right? And so all of that stuff is at play. Like, what do we have here? And it's not, and that's really a complete side issue and totally unimportant, right? But all of a sudden it's really important to her, because we're in her mind, when she was thinking about it, 3 divided by 3, 1 divided by 3 is 1. Now we're talking about like, no, we're going to take the whole piece and we're going to give 1 part to Sarah and 1 part to Willow, and you're going to get 1 part. That, right? We're going to cut it up and everybody gets equal parts. And then Willow's like, no, I don't need it. I can just take a small part. And then you're like, oh, look, Willow's willing to give half hers to you. Okay, here's Willow's half. Do you want that? Now look, your piece is bigger than everyone else's. Is that enough to like appease you and make you, can you play with that? Do you feel good about that? So all that stuff is happening, right? Here we are. We've got something cut into thirds. As facilitators, we're doing that with the emotional developmental piece of relationship building and supporting and being like, hey, we're all here. We all care about you. We all would love for you to stop crying. And we would all love for you to come back and play with us. And yeah, it's just so much bigger. There's so many more things happening than, you could ever, like, the value of doing a worksheet is so minuscule compared to everything that's happening in the division of the Play-Doh.
Yeah.
So yeah, developmentally, way better situation, way better.
So no matter what developmental stage their little brains are at, they are being seen and heard, and their brains are developing like completely differently than they would be in a school, a regular school. There's this human piece that's like blaring, that's just, to actually take the time and sit with someone's emotions. Who really even ever does that? So, if your centers are literally taking the time to hold space with humans, no wonder the fruits of those spaces are like people who are happy, that know what they're doing and feeling and how to kind of be alive on the planet, which is way more important than an education. The education, the curriculums are always available at any point.
Yeah, at any point along the way, right? And whereas when she's 5 and she's doing the Play-Doh, she is going to, we did all the measuring and everything to facilitate them getting the Play-Doh. When she's 9, she's going to be making the Play-Doh for everyone else. And she's like, okay, so 1 thing of Play-Doh makes enough for 4 kids. And we have 12 kids who are interested in Play-Doh, and she's doing all of the math herself. Like, okay, I want to make sure that I have enough. And she's ordering the supplies herself. She's pricing out the best prices for her supplies, because she has other stuff that she wants to work on as well. So all of that stuff, right? as she moves up the ladder developmentally, all of that stuff comes in. Still Play-Doh. We're just playing Play-Doh. And she's got a little 5-year-old who's come in,
Yeah.
and the 5-year-old really wants Play-Doh now. And she loves Play-Doh. She's always loved Play-Doh. And so she's like, let's get this kid some Play-Doh. We got to make this happen. So then she's going through it because she's been playing with Play-Doh for, she's done it for 4 years. She's ready to do it for someone else. And she goes out of the way. Maybe she doesn't know the math to multiply her Play-Doh recipe for 4 people up so that it can handle all the 12 people. But there's people in the space and we have a close relationship. So she knows that she can come to me and be like, okay, so I wanted to make Play-Doh, but there's not enough for everyone because the last time I made it, it was way too small. Everyone's going to get a piece that's only like this big. They'll never be able to do it. Plus we want to do colors. So I have to have at least 4 different, right? And she's like all on it. So she comes to me and she says, make this happen. And then we get our pencils out and we're figuring and looking on Amazon for all the things that we need to order. And, in our centers, the kids have their own budget. And so they have to request supplies and they have to get agreement from the community. So she's filling out her forms of, we need this, and we need that, we need the other thing, and going around building relationships, saying, hey, there's this many people who are interested in Play-Doh. Will you sign off on us spending some of our money for Play-Doh? Yes, right? So all that stuff, it looks different when they're 5 than when they're 9. And then again, it looks different when they're 15. But all the way along, they brought themselves to the table and they are choosing to do the activities. And because it's their choice, it just goes so much deeper. So a 5-year-old is really working on like emotions and social engagements and like, how do I interact with these humans that I'm around? And we spend a lot of time on that. And as they develop, you move along in that and you see like, oh, they're more project oriented now. And then they move into like, now they're just off and running on their 1 or 2 things that they're just like, dive in and absorb. So it's really much more natural. And even though she didn't do all those worksheets in the 4 years that she was playing Play-Doh, when she's 9 and she comes and she says, I need to multiply this recipe, I only have to teach it to her once. And then she knows, right? It's only a couple of times, a couple of recipes, and she knows how to multiply the ingredients. Whereas she would have been slaving over, 4 years of multiplication and the yada, yada, yada. And now she's just like, no, I got 12 people. I need 4 cups for this. And, she just works it out. So that's where those figures of, she would have had to do 400 worksheets over the last 4 years in order to accomplish this. But now she's 9, she wants to make that Play-Doh. She comes to the table, we work it out, and she only needs to practice it 10 times and it's implanted in there. So all that time that she spent playing Play-Doh for the last 4 years, when?
Yeah. And okay. Wow. And the difference being is that she's motivated from within versus from without.
Yeah. So it's great, right? Then she comes, she asks about how to multiply the recipe. I tell her how to multiply the recipe. She's got it. No worksheets, no nothing, just fun.
Wow. Early practice at actually enjoying the life that you have. So I think, so are there certain levels of math that you try to achieve?
Never.
Do you teach reading? Same thing. Okay. And as we wrap it up here, I'm seeing that it takes a certain level of faith in what a human is, what a child is, and what they really are. And that faith feels to me like it would need to land somewhere in that they're whole and complete. They're just a whole and complete being. And this could be another talk for another time, but I just feel like what's coming up is there has to be a certain amount of faith and belief in humans and how humans show up to even do it this way.
Yeah. And, the thing that comes up for me is people had to have a lot of faith that people with different colored skin were humans at one point as well. They had to have a lot of faith that like a woman could manage a financial project at one time as well. And the reason that it takes faith is because it's been very, very actively weeded out of our culture. It was a very active process in order to get an entire culture to believe that someone with Black skin is not a human. Like that was extremely laid out. Everybody, you know, like the leadership of the country was super on board to like dehumanize people who had different colored skin. You know, how did we get thinking that a woman couldn't be a property owner? How did that happen? Why, right? Like, who thought that? And these things that are a part of our culture that at one time, it took a lot of faith to be like, yes, I guess a woman could own property and the end of the world wouldn't happen. I would say the same thing, like, yeah, it takes a lot of faith because it's been very actively pushed out of our reality. But nobody thought it took a lot of faith to like believe that someone could be the president of the United States with like a 3rd grade education or an 8th grade education. Like nobody thought that before, you know. All the great leaders who have dropped out of school or not been educated at all, like, and nobody had to think like, oh man, what's going to happen? You know, how could this person's brain ever develop? How could they ever do anything? Like before it was actively pushed out, it took no faith whatsoever. Formal education is young, super young, and the world has gone on just fine. People they perpetuated humanity for all this time. So I think that that's only born out of a very recent system. And so I don't know if it helps at all to like build faith, but if you think like, oh geez, maybe this is just a made up construct, kind of like Blacks not being human was a made up construct. Just kind of compare it like that and be like, whoa, maybe what we think isn't true. To kind of hold it openly and explore it more. And the possibility of like a great injustice happening because we aren't holding it openly.
Yeah. Wow. I have so much to think about. But as usual, these talks never disappoint, and I learn something every time, and I will always learn something every time because I want to. And thank you for holding space for it all and for just being a pioneer in it. I mean, really, it personally means a lot to me, and with my crazy vision of the world being overtaken by communities like yours, you know, I just really appreciate the courage that it takes to do this, and I can't wait to talk to you about 50 more times.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
Bye, Emily.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.